The mountain air was sharp enough to sting. Cameras stood frozen in mist, their red lights blinking like tiny fires in the dark. It was past midnight when the crew gathered for another long night of filming. Snowflakes drifted gently over the movie set, turning the world white and silent. Keanu Reeves adjusted his gloves and looked toward the hills. The temperature had dropped far below what the forecast promised. The scene they were shooting demanded focus, emotion, and calm. But the weather tested everyone's strength. Technicians rubbed their hands together near weak heaters. Makeup artists wrapped scarves over their faces. The crew moved slower, their breaths forming clouds that faded into the dark. Sandra Bullock arrived quietly, carrying a thermos of tea. She smiled at everyone she passed, her calm presence bringing a little warmth. The director's voice echoed through the valley as he gave final instructions. "We need this shot before sunrise," he shouted. Cameras rolled, and the sound of the clapperboard broke the silence. Keanu stepped into position, his breath visible in the frosty air. He looked at Sandra across the set, and they exchanged a small nod. The scene began. It was a dramatic moment between their characters, full of emotion and pain. They were meant to argue, cry, and fall into silence. As the scene unfolded, Sandra felt something off. Not in the script, but in the atmosphere. The sound of the generator was uneven. A small flicker in the corner light caught her attention. Behind the main camera, near the lighting rig, she saw a young man holding a heavy cable. He was trying to stay steady, but his body trembled. His jacket was too thin for the mountain cold. His fingers, bare and red, gripped the metal too tightly. Sandra's heart sank. She looked at Keanu, who had just finished his line. His eyes followed her glance, and he noticed it too. The young crew member shivering in silence, trying not to draw attention. The director yelled, "Cut!" breaking the moment. Everyone rushed to reset for another take, but Keanu didn't move back to his mark. Instead, he stepped away from the camera, his face serious. Sandra watched him go, her breath catching in the cold. The crew assumed he was checking his prop. Only Sandra followed with her eyes as Keanu disappeared behind the lights. Keanu found the boy sitting on a crate, shaking violently, his teeth chattering. His name tag read Liam. He tried to stand, embarrassed to be seen by the star himself. "I'm fine, sir," he said, voice breaking. Keanu crouched beside him. "You're not fine," he replied softly. Without a word, he removed his heavy coat and wrapped it around Liam's shoulders. The boy's eyes widened. "I can't take this," he whispered. "You can," Keanu said, tightening the coat gently. "And you will." Sandra soon appeared, holding her thermos. "Drink this," she said kindly. Liam hesitated, then nodded. The warmth hit his chest, and his eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," he said, almost whispering. "No one noticed I was getting cold. I didn't want to cause trouble." Sandra looked at Keanu. "You're not trouble," she said. "You're part of this team. No one should be invisible here." The night continued, but something changed in the air. Keanu told the assistant director he would take a short break. Sandra followed him as he made a call near the trailer. His tone was serious but calm. He spoke to someone about emergency supplies, extra heaters, and food deliveries. He didn't mention names, just actions. They returned to set quietly, never mentioning what happened. The cameras rolled again. No one knew that behind every perfect shot, two people had already started a quiet act of kindness. As dawn approached, the storm grew stronger. The generator flickered again. The director decided to pause the shoot until sunrise. Crew members huddled inside vans and tents, waiting for daylight. Keanu and Sandra stayed near the heaters, speaking softly. "He's young," Sandra said, thinking about Liam. "Reminds me of my first job. Long hours, no rest, just wanting to prove I belong." Keanu nodded. "Same here. People see the finished film, but they never see the ones who make it possible." When the sky turned pale blue, the director called it a wrap for the night. Everyone clapped weakly, too tired to celebrate. Keanu glanced around, making sure Liam was safe. He saw the boy asleep inside a van, wrapped in his coat. As the crew packed up, Keanu told Sandra quietly, "We'll fix this by tomorrow." She didn't ask how. She knew he meant it. None of them realized that this small act would soon reach the hearts of millions. But for now, it was just between them, the mountain, and a quiet morning after a cold night. The next morning began with silence. Snow covered the mountain roads, and the crew moved slowly to restart the day's shoot. The sun had barely risen, but its light painted the frozen valley gold. The air was still cold enough to bite, yet something about the morning felt softer than before. Sandra arrived early. She carried a box of muffins and 2 flasks of hot chocolate. As she stepped onto the set, she saw crew members already gathered around heaters. Liam was there too, looking much better. He still wore Keanu's coat, and the sleeves hung long over his hands. When he noticed Sandra, he straightened, embarrassed. "Keep it on," she said with a smile. "It suits you better than it ever did him." Keanu arrived soon after, calm and quiet as always. He greeted everyone before walking straight to the lighting team. He asked them about last night, listened to their answers, and checked the broken generator himself. Most stars avoided these small details, but he believed kindness meant doing the unseen things. Liam approached him shyly. "Thank you again, sir. I didn't mean to slow anyone down." Keanu shook his head. "You didn't slow anyone down. You reminded us to look up once in a while." The boy smiled, unsure what to say. He had never spoken to someone so famous before. Keanu handed him a sandwich. "Eat first," he said. "Gratitude can wait." As the morning warmed slightly, the team prepared for another long sequence. Sandra rehearsed her lines beside Keanu, but between takes, she kept glancing at the crew. She noticed the way some of them rubbed their hands, the same thin gloves, the same fatigue. She whispered to Keanu, "They're still freezing. There has to be something more we can do." Keanu nodded slowly. "Already done," she frowned. "What do you mean?" "You'll see tonight," he replied, his voice gentle but firm. The shoot continued until sunset. The sky turned orange and purple, reflecting off the snow like glass. When the director finally called cut, everyone sighed in relief. The crew started packing equipment ready to rest after a long day. But as the trucks prepared to leave, something unexpected happened. A delivery van appeared on the narrow path. It stopped beside the base camp, and workers began unloading boxes marked Warmth Supply Co. Inside were brand new thermal jackets, gloves, hot water bottles, and insulated boots, one for every crew member. The assistant director blinked in confusion. "Who ordered this?" The driver smiled. "Anonymous order, sir. Said to deliver tonight, no signature." The crew stood in stunned silence. One by one, they tried on their jackets. The warmth felt like sunlight after months of rain. Sandra watched from a distance, her eyes misty. She didn't need to ask who had arranged it. Keanu stood beside her, hands in his pockets, pretending to be just another observer. "You really did this," she said softly. "They deserve it," he replied. "They work harder than anyone. The least we can do is make sure they go home warm. You didn't even tell them it was you," she said. "Because it shouldn't be about names," he replied. "It's about care." The director gathered everyone for a short speech. "Whoever did this," he said, "thank you. This team has worked through storms and sleepless nights, and tonight you reminded us that kindness still exists." Applause echoed through the valley. Keanu stayed silent, clapping along with the others. Later that night, Sandra found him sitting alone near the campfire. He was staring at the flames, deep in thought. She sat beside him, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "Why do you always do things in silence?" she asked. Keanu smiled faintly. "Because noise fades. Actions don't." She nodded slowly, feeling the truth in his words. "You know," she said, "this set feels different now. Everyone's talking, laughing, helping. Maybe your silence is louder than you think." Liam joined them quietly, holding 2 cups of tea. "The heaters are working again," he said cheerfully. "The crew says thank you, whoever you are." Keanu accepted the tea, pretending not to know. "Tell them whoever it was probably meant it." The 3 of them sat by the fire, the stars shimmering above. The storm had passed, but something deeper remained. A warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. As the night grew darker, Sandra felt something shift inside her. She realized that the truest scenes were not the ones captured on camera. They were the ones no one planned, no one rehearsed, no one praised. Moments where kindness wrote its own script. She looked at Keanu, who gazed at the stars as if searching for peace among them. In that silence, she understood that respect and humility were not choices for him. They were his way of breathing. Tomorrow, the world would continue with lights, cameras, and action. But tonight, somewhere high in the mountains, a quiet act of compassion had already become the most meaningful story of all. By the third night, the crew no longer looked tired in the same way. The heavy jackets and warm gloves had changed more than their comfort. Something invisible had lifted from the air. Laughter returned to the mountain. People who barely spoke before now shared jokes while carrying equipment. Even the director seemed less sharp, offering rare smiles as he reviewed scenes. No one knew who had sent the supplies, but rumors started spreading. Some said the studio felt guilty for not preparing better. Others whispered that a local charity had donated them. But deep inside, Sandra knew the truth, and Keanu's calm silence confirmed it. As the cameras rolled again, the night wind brushed against the tents. Keanu stood quietly behind the set after finishing his scene. He watched the younger crew members helping each other tie cables and move props. It made him think of his early years in Hollywood when he too had worked with frozen fingers and empty pockets, trying to prove he belonged. A soft voice broke his thoughts. "You're thinking again?" Sandra said as she approached. She wore her thick coat, her hair tucked inside a woolen cap. She handed him a small metal flask. "Hot tea," she added. Keanu smiled. "You read minds now?" "No," she said, smiling back. "Just your eyes. They tell stories even when your mouth stays quiet." He laughed softly and took a sip. "You ever wonder," he said, "how many people walk through life unnoticed? Like background crew in their own stories." "Every day," she replied. "But you noticed one. And now everyone feels seen." They both looked toward Liam. He was carrying lighting gear twice his size, but there was pride in his steps. When he caught their eyes, he waved awkwardly, cheeks red from both cold and shyness. "He reminds me of my brother," Sandra said quietly. "Always working in the shadows, never asking for thanks." "Maybe he doesn't need it," Keanu said. "Sometimes being part of something bigger is thanks enough." Their conversation paused as the director called for another take. The scene was intense, filled with tears and emotion, but the real emotion waited off camera, where life unfolded unscripted. When the shooting ended, a storm rolled in. Clouds thickened and snow started to fall faster. The director decided to continue one final shot before the weather worsened. As they prepared, lightning flashed in the distance. Crew members rushed to protect equipment, but the sudden wind made the cables snap and lights sway. Liam ran to secure a lighting pole that had come loose. Sandra saw him struggling against the wind, and before she could move, Keanu ran past her. He reached Liam just as the pole began to fall. Together, they pushed it back upright. The crew shouted for help, and others joined, anchoring it to the ground. After several tense seconds, the danger passed. Everyone sighed in relief. Liam looked up, his face pale. "Thank you, sir," he said breathlessly. "You didn't have to do that." Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. "Of course I did," he said calmly. "We all hold the same lights." The storm worsened, forcing the team to wrap early. Inside the tents, heaters glowed softly and steam from hot soup filled the air. The mood turned warm again, but the sense of wonder grew. People whispered about what they had just seen. The way the actor everyone admired risked himself without hesitation. Sandra sat beside Keanu, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "You keep surprising them," she said softly. "They're the real surprise," he replied. "Look at how they care for each other now. It's contagious." Later that night, Liam entered the tent with a small box in his hands. He approached Sandra and Keanu nervously. "I made something," he said. "It's not much." Inside the box was a simple wooden plaque. Carved in shaky letters were the words, "For those who make dreams under cold skies." Sandra touched the carving gently. "You wrote this?" Liam nodded. "I just wanted everyone to remember that even small acts mean a lot." Keanu smiled with quiet pride. "You have no idea how true that is," he said. They asked Liam to place it near the main heater so everyone could see it. As the night deepened, crew members passed by, reading the words silently. Many stopped for a moment, their faces soft with thought. Some even took photos. The next morning, the plaque became a small symbol of unity. People started calling it the warmth sign. Every new member who arrived on set touched it before beginning work. No one knew it was made by Liam, and he never told them. He said it was enough that people felt something when they saw it. Keanu watched all this quietly. When Sandra asked him what he was thinking, he said, "This is what movies should really be about. Not fame, not scenes, but moments like this. People remembering each other kindly." She nodded, eyes shining. "And maybe one day," she said softly, "someone will tell this story too." They didn't realize how soon that would come true, or how one small act of compassion was already spreading beyond the mountain, somewhere in a nearby town. A photo of Keanu giving his coat to Liam had been uploaded anonymously. It began to circulate, reaching people who had never heard of the film at all. Comments poured in from strangers who felt touched by what they saw, but Keanu and Sandra had no idea. On the mountain, they simply continued working, unaware that their quiet kindness had begun to move millions far beyond the set. The world was starting to watch a story they never intended to tell, a story written not by script, but by heart. The mountain had turned quieter as the days passed. Filming neared its final week, and the crew worked harder than ever. The once harsh cold now felt gentler, not because the weather had changed, but because the people had. Warmth had spread across the team like fire and snow. Sandra arrived early that morning, holding her script and smiling at everyone she passed. The camp was already alive with movement. She could hear laughter coming from the makeup tent, and Liam's voice somewhere near the generators. He had become part of the heart of the crew now. When Keanu stepped out of his trailer, everyone greeted him with cheerful respect. He nodded kindly, never seeking attention. He looked around, noticing the warmth sign Liam had carved, still standing proudly near the main tent. The snow around it had melted slightly from the heat of the nearby fire, as if the words themselves carried warmth. But unknown to them, far from the mountain, a storm of a different kind was brewing online. A photograph had begun spreading across social media, an image of Keanu bending down, wrapping his coat around a freezing young man. No one knew who had taken it or how it leaked. The caption read simply, "Real heroes don't need cameras." Within hours, the photo went viral. People across the world began sharing it with messages of admiration and love. News outlets started calling it the Quiet Rescue. Hashtags about humility and kindness filled timelines. Yet Keanu and Sandra, far away in the mountain camp, remained unaware. That afternoon, a news crew arrived unannounced at the base camp. The director was confused. "We didn't invite media," he said sharply. One of the journalists stepped forward holding a tablet. "We're not here for spoilers," she said. "We just wanted to ask about this." She turned the screen toward the team. There it was, the photo. The same moment Sandra remembered from that freezing night. Keanu kneeling beside Liam, his face half hidden by the snow. The crew gasped. Liam froze where he stood. His face turned pale, and his hands began to shake again. But this time not from cold. Sandra looked at Keanu. "They found it," she whispered. Keanu exhaled slowly, calm as ever. "It's okay," he said softly. The moment wasn't ours to keep forever. The journalists asked for statements. Keanu refused interviews politely. "The story isn't about me," he said firmly. "It's about remembering that everyone deserves care. That's all," Sandra added gently. "Sometimes the smallest act can mean everything to someone. We're just grateful he's okay." They posed no photos, gave no long speeches, but the world still spoke for them. Millions of comments filled social media within hours. One read, "In a world chasing fame, he chose silence." Another said, "They didn't save just one person. They reminded all of us to look closer." By evening, the crew gathered in the dining tent, still processing what had happened. Liam sat quietly beside Sandra. "I didn't want anyone to know," he said softly. "They'll think I asked for pity." Sandra placed a hand on his shoulder. "No one will think that," she said. "You didn't ask for anything. They saw what kindness looks like when it's real." Keanu nodded. "People are learning from it. That's what matters." The director, once impatient and strict, now looked humbled. "You two changed this set," he said. "I used to think a good film came from perfect shots. Now I know it comes from people who care. As the night deepened, snow began falling again. The flicker of campfires painted soft light across the tents. The team spoke in low voices, sharing personal stories of their own struggles. One crew member said he used to sleep in his car while chasing film jobs. Another confessed that she once thought of quitting, but now felt proud to be part of something meaningful. Keanu listened quietly, his gaze distant. Sandra noticed the reflection of fire in his eyes and thought, maybe that's what warmth really means. Not just heat, but light that reaches hearts. The next morning, the production company issued a statement confirming the viral story was real, but not planned. It praised the entire crew for enduring difficult conditions and emphasized that the spirit of unity was what made the movie possible. Sandra smiled when she read the article headline, "Kindness on set melts millions." But for Keanu, the story was not over. He had one more plan. He called the studio anonymously, requesting a special bonus to be distributed quietly among the lowest-paid crew members. He made sure it was processed without his name attached. The note attached simply said, "For those who stayed when it was cold." Later, Sandra found out through a producer. She confronted him gently. "You really can't stop, can you?" she said with a teasing smile. Keanu shrugged lightly. "I just don't like unfinished kindness." She laughed softly. "One day they'll find out all the things you do." "I hope they never do," he replied. "It's better when they just feel it." That evening, when the news reached the crew, people cheered and hugged each other. No one knew who sent the gift, but they all suspected. Still, no one asked. They respected the silence that had given them warmth. Liam, now standing taller, approached Keanu once more. "I don't know how to thank you," he said quietly. Keanu looked at him with a calm smile. "Live kindly," he said. "That's the only thank you I'll ever need." As night fell over the mountain, the wind softened to a whisper. The fire crackled, and laughter echoed through the cold valley. The story that had started with a shivering boy had now reached the entire world. But the people who lived it only wanted one thing: to keep the warmth alive. None of them knew, yet, that the biggest reveal was still to come, hidden behind one truth the world had never heard. A truth that would make even the quietest act of kindness shine brighter than fame itself. The storm passed, but something deeper lingered in the air. The viral photo had changed everything, yet Keanu and Sandra continued their work quietly, as if nothing had happened. They smiled through interviews, focused on each take, and reminded everyone that fame should never outshine humility. The mountain seemed calmer now, as if it had accepted the story that unfolded on its slopes. Every morning, Liam arrived early, helping the lighting crew set up. He carried the same careful smile, but inside, his heart was full of questions. He often looked at Keanu from a distance, wondering how a man so famous could act so humble. On the fifth night of filming, the director gathered everyone around the campfire for a final team meeting. "We've done something rare here," he said. "Not just a movie, but a message. The world saw what kindness looks like. I think this film will carry that same heart." The crew cheered. Some clapped, others laughed. Keanu smiled but stayed silent, staring at the flickering flames. Sandra noticed his expression. It was peaceful, yet reflective, like a man who carried a secret he never planned to share. After dinner, Liam approached Sandra hesitantly. "Can I talk to you?" he asked. She nodded and led him toward the quiet part of the camp. Snow fell softly, dusting their hair like white feathers. Liam took a deep breath. "There's something I never told anyone," he said. "Before I got this job, I didn't think I'd ever make it here. I came from a small town. My mom raised me alone. She worked nights so I could go to film school. One day I got a letter saying I'd been chosen for a scholarship. It covered everything: tuition, travel, equipment, all from an anonymous donor." Sandra listened carefully, her heart beating faster as he continued. The letter said it was from a fund created by two people who believed in giving second chances, Liam said. It was called the Light Foundation. I never knew who ran it. But a few months ago, I got a call that a film company had seen my student work and wanted to give me a chance as a crew intern. They said it was connected to the same fund. He paused and looked at her with wide eyes. And now that I've been here, seeing how he treats everyone, how he never wants credit, I think I know who it was. Sandra felt her throat tighten. She already knew what he was about to say. It was Keanu and you, he whispered. Wasn't it? Sandra looked away for a moment, her breath visible in the cold. She didn't answer immediately. Keanu never talks about it, she said softly. He just believes kindness should travel quietly. I helped him start it years ago after we met a young filmmaker struggling to pay rent. We promised each other that if we ever made it far enough, we'd lift others who felt unseen. You were one of them. Liam stood frozen, his eyes filling with tears. I don't know how to thank you, he said. You didn't just change my life. You gave me a reason to believe good people still exist. Sandra placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Don't thank us, she said. Just keep the light going. Help someone else one day. That's how kindness survives. Unbeknownst to them, Keanu had been standing behind the tent, listening quietly. He walked toward them with his usual calmness. So, he said, smiling softly, you found out? Liam's tears slipped down his face. Why didn't you tell me? Because it's not about who gives, Keanu said gently. It's about what happens after. You worked hard. You earned this. We just gave you a door. You walked through it. Sandra smiled through tears. He's right. You did all the work. We only believed in you. Liam nodded slowly, his voice breaking. You didn't just believe in me. You reminded me that humanity still has a heartbeat. Keanu put a hand on his shoulder. Promise me one thing, he said. When you meet someone standing in the cold one day, you'll give them your coat. Liam nodded firmly. I will. Always. They stood there under the falling snow, three people bound not by fame or power, but by something far more powerful: respect. The next morning, the final day of filming arrived. The mountain glowed under sunlight, pure and bright. Before shooting began, Keanu gathered the entire crew. Before we wrap, he said softly, I want everyone to remember something. Every light on this set was powered by someone's effort you might never notice. Every shot, every sound, every frame, it all happens because of people who care. So today, let's make this final scene for them. The crew applauded. The emotion in the air was raw, almost sacred. Even the director's voice trembled slightly when he called for the last take. They filmed through golden sunlight, and when the director finally yelled, "Cut!" applause erupted. Tears fell freely. Hugs replaced handshakes. Keanu and Sandra stood together at the edge of the cliff, overlooking the valley. The wind carried the sound of laughter below. Sandra turned to him and said, You realize you just changed another life, right? He smiled quietly. He changed ours too. As the sun set behind the mountains, the world below began to glow. Down in the town, people were still sharing the viral story. But soon, they would learn something far deeper. The truth behind the photo, the scholarship, and the circle of kindness that started long before anyone knew it existed. And when that truth came out, it would melt not just millions of hearts, but the world's idea of what real heroes look like. The final night on the mountain was quiet, almost too quiet. The storm had ended and the stars returned, bright and endless above the camp. The crew had packed most of the equipment, yet no one wanted to leave. There was a sense that something important had happened here, something far greater than a film. Keanu walked slowly through the empty set, his boots crunching softly against the snow. He stopped near the heater where Liam's wooden plaque still stood, for those who make dreams under cold skies. He touched it gently, brushing off a thin layer of frost. The words glowed in the firelight, simple yet eternal. Behind him, Sandra approached, holding 2 mugs of tea. "You always find the quiet spots," she said softly. "Quiet spots find me," he replied with a small smile. They stood together, sipping tea in silence. The fire cracked softly, the smell of wood smoke drifting through the air. Finally, Sandra broke the silence. "You know the world isn't going to let this story fade," she said. "People are calling it the warmth movement." Keanu sighed lightly. "I never wanted a movement," he said. "I just wanted him to be warm," she smiled gently. "And that's exactly why it became one." As they spoke, Liam approached carrying a folded newspaper. "You both need to see this," he said. His voice trembled with emotion. The headline read, "Anonymous Stars Revealed as Founders of the Light Foundation." The article described how records from an independent charity audit had linked years of scholarships and emergency funds for young filmmakers to 2 silent donors, Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. Their names had surfaced only after a student's thank you letter went public, mentioning a project called Light for Those in Shadows. The article told stories of hundreds of lives changed, students who became artists, crew members who built careers, and struggling families who found new hope. It described the recent mountain incident as the final piece of a puzzle the world had never seen before. Liam looked up, tears filling his eyes. "The truth's out now," he said. "Everyone knows." Keanu stayed silent for a moment, reading every line. Then he looked at Sandra. "I guess secrets don't stay hidden forever." She nodded slowly. "Maybe this one wasn't meant to." The director approached soon after, holding his phone. "You two might want to know, the Foundation's website crashed. Donations are pouring in from all over the world. People are calling it the kindness chain." Keanu blinked, surprised. "The kindness chain?" "Yes," the director said. "People are starting their own acts of giving and tagging them with that phrase. It's everywhere." Sandra smiled softly. "That's beautiful," she said. "A chain that doesn't bind but connects." Later that night, the crew gathered one last time around the fire. The wind was calm, and the stars glittered above like tiny lanterns. The air was full of peace. The director raised a toast. "To everyone who gave more than effort, who gave heart," he said, "and to the stars who reminded us what real light looks like." Cheers filled the air, but Keanu lifted his hand, asking for quiet. His voice was calm but carried through the night. "Thank you all," he began. "But this isn't our story alone. It's yours too. Every person here showed kindness in some way, a smile, a helping hand, a warm word. We just noticed it. We didn't create this moment. We only passed it on." He looked at Liam, whose eyes shone under the firelight. "And to the ones who remind us to see what matters, thank you." Liam stood, voice trembling. "You gave me a coat when I was cold, but what you really gave me was a lesson. That kindness isn't a headline, it's a habit." The crew applauded softly, many wiping away tears. Sandra turned toward the fire, her expression gentle and full of emotion. "When I was younger," she said, "someone told me that fame fades but decency stays. Tonight proved that true. The world doesn't need more stars. It needs more warmth." As the fire burned low, Keanu placed his coat, the same one he had given Liam, over the wooden plaque. "Let it stay here," he said quietly. "A symbol for the next crew that comes, so they remember to look around." Morning arrived slowly, painting the snow in shades of gold. Trucks rolled down the mountain carrying equipment, laughter, and a feeling of completion. Keanu and Sandra stayed back for a final moment, watching the sun rise. Sandra whispered, "You know, someday someone will make a movie about this." Keanu smiled faintly. "As long as they remember the crew," he said. "I'm fine with that." A small bird landed on the wooden plaque, chirping softly before flying toward the sunlight. It felt like a blessing, like the world itself, saying thank you. Weeks later, the story of the Light Foundation reached global headlines. Thousands joined the kindness chain. People left coats in public parks with notes saying, "For those who make dreams under cold skies." Schools used the story to teach empathy, and every mention led back to that mountain where 2 actors simply did what felt human. In interviews, Keanu refused to take credit. We didn't melt millions, he said with his calm smile. They melted themselves. Kindness only reminds people of what's already inside them. And Sandra, when asked why she thought the story touched so many, said quietly, "Because in a cold world, warmth still travels faster than fame." The mountain returned to silence, but somewhere in the snow, under that coat and plaque, the spirit of that night remained, a reminder that real light isn't made by cameras. It's made by hearts that choose to care. And that is how one simple moment, born from a shivering crew member and two kind souls, became a movement that changed how the world saw kindness forever.